Hi everyone, welcome to Rainier View and happy Father's Day. My name is Michelle. Thank you so much for joining us today. For those of you that are new with us, we have several resources for you at rainierview.org/RVCC Online. These include a great lesson for your kids, links to our online services for students, and more. You can also submit a connection card to let us know a little bit about you and your family, as well as prayer requests so members of our team can be praying for your needs. We're going to start off the service with a couple of worship songs followed by a message, and then Pastor Corey will come back to close us out and lead us in a time of communion. Thanks again for being here with us and enjoy the service.
Hello everyone, welcome to RVCC Online. Great to have you with us. Join us in some singing today. We are a sea of voices, we are an ocean of your praise, gathered under one name. We are a tide that's rising, and we cannot be contained. Gathered under one name, oh, for 1,000 tongues to sing the glories of our Lord God Almighty. Oh, to sing the Savior's praise, the triumph of His grace. You are worthy, yes, you are worthy, God. We found our anthem at the cross where sin was slain. Gathered under one name, where every chain is broken and every sorrow swept away. Gathered under one name, oh, for 1,000 tongues to sing the glories of our Lord God Almighty. Oh, to sing the Savior's praise, the triumph of His grace. You are worthy, yes, you are worthy, God. Sing with all heaven, sing. With all heaven sing, and all earth below, one holy King, one highest throne. With all heaven sing, and all earth below, one holy King, one highest throne. Oh, for 1,000 tongues to sing the glories of our Lord God Almighty. Oh, to sing the Savior's praise, the triumph of His grace. You are worthy, yes, you are worthy, God. Oh, for 1,000 tongues to sing the glories of our Lord God Almighty. Oh, to sing the Savior's praise, the triumph of His grace. You are worthy, yes, you are worthy, God.
How great the chasm that lay between us, how high the mountain I could not climb. In desperation I turned to heaven and spoke your name into the night. Then through the darkness, your loving kindness tore through the shadows of my soul. The work is finished, the end is written. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Who could imagine so great a mercy? What heart could fathom such boundless grace? The God of ages stepped down from glory to wear my sin and bear my shame. The cross has spoken, I am forgiven. The King of Kings calls me his own. Beautiful Savior, I'm yours forever. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. And hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your buried body began to breathe. Out of the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your buried body began to breathe. Out of the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Oh Jesus, yours is the victory. Oh, hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. And hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Oh God, you are my living hope.
Thank you, worship team, for that great set. Honestly, I love being able to worship from my home and know that I'm worshiping together with so many other people around the city and around the state. And so I appreciate you guys so much. My name is Corey Wilson, and I'm one of the pastors here. And the reason we're standing outside is actually because we're going to be talking with a friend of ours, Claudia Miller, who through the Franklin Pierce school system helps deliver food to students in need in our church and in our community. And so we took the opportunity to sit down with her this week and to talk with our team that's been delivering food throughout the pandemic. So check this out.
Good morning, I'm Claudia Miller. I'm the Family Engagement Coordinator for Franklin Pierce Schools. I support our students experiencing homelessness and our students in out-of-home placement, along with a variety of other family programs in our district. The Weekend Food Bag Program, in partnership with our Savior Lutheran Church, helps to feed just over 260 of our students that need a little extra nourishment over the weekend. It's helped not only some of our students that are experiencing homelessness, but just some of the families that are impacted by the COVID pandemic and needing a little extra help to keep their kids nourished on the weekends. Thank you so much, Rainier View volunteers. We could not have delivered these meals to our families without your love and support and your time and energy every Friday. So thank you so much for everything you do for our community.
We're so honored to partner with our local schools and community organizations to join in the work that's being done. We want to make sure that you're staying connected during this time, and here are some ways to do that. You can sign up to receive our church emails, you can follow us on Facebook, and you can follow us on Instagram. We're having a virtual VBS this summer. Registration is now open. It'll be taking place on July 27th through the 31st and will be for all kids ages 3 through 5th grade. To get more information and to sign up, please visit rainierview.org/VBS. If you have any questions, you can also email one of our kids pastors, Cassandra or Kenny. We also want to keep you up to date with the latest information as it pertains to the reopening of our physical campuses in Graham and Parkland. The best way to do that is for you to sign up in our regular church emails on our website now. We're a church that loves to be generous and invests in helping people grow spiritually and experience God's hope and peace in their lives. You can give by simply texting RVCC to 77977 to use our safe and secure online system. If you prefer to mail in a check, we're checking that every day as well. If you're new with us, please don't feel obligated to give in any way. We're just so glad that you're here today. All right, let's join Pastor Jeff as we continue in our series, Alternate Ending.
Hey, welcome to Rainier View this morning. My name is Jeff, and we're so glad that you are joining us this morning. Hey, have you ever been to a fun house, right? At a carnival or a fairgrounds, and those fun houses, and they have all these sort of different weird elements, but one of the cornerstone things that is part of a fun house at a carnival or fairgrounds is that weird room of mirrors, right? This kind of funhouse mirror thing, and they distort your image, all these different mirrors, and some of them stretch you out really thin, and some of them pudge you up in a ball, and some of them make your face go like this. So here's the reality for me. Those funhouse mirror rooms creep me out. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the fact that anytime somebody in a movie or a TV show is in a funhouse of mirrors, something bad is about to happen. Somebody's hunting them down, a monster's about to jump out. Like, just nothing good ever happens in a funhouse. I don't know if it's that, but they just creep me out. Like, the funhouse mirrors, they're not my thing. I don't like them. I don't enjoy them. And so why am I talking about funhouse mirrors though, right? Like, there's no reason to do so other than I think for me, it helps me connect to this idea of adversity that we're looking at in our series, Alternate Ending. That adversity kind of does the same thing that a funhouse mirror does. It distorts, it twists our perspective, and so we can't really see ourselves clearly. And adversity often has the same effect in our lives, and it does that. And so in order for us to gain greater clarity around our situation and our perspective, we need to kind of be able to see clearly and divorce ourselves from the perspective that adversity is bringing to our situation and gain some clarity. And so we're hoping that in this series that you are gaining that you're gaining that perspective, as well as gaining that ability to have the strength to stand up under the pressures that you might face, that adversity is kind of weighing down on you this morning, that you are discovering strength to stand up under that. And so today we're going to look at an example of a group of believers that Peter, one of the early leaders of the early church, is writing to in his letter of 1 Peter. And you can open up in your Bible if you want, digitally or physically, get that open, but we're going to be in 1 Peter. And now what you need to know, a little bit of kind of background, anytime you open up the Bible, we need to understand kind of the context of whatever book that we're in, because the Bible is kind of more like a library of books collected. And so this letter of 1 Peter, the context is that he's writing to a groups of followers of Jesus who are facing what we would consider pretty intense persecution. Now, I think we have to be careful in our context how we talk about adversity versus persecution. And so for this morning, here's how I'm going to define those two terms as we kind of use them a little bit throughout our morning together. Adversity is just when you or I encounter resistance. Anytime we encounter resistance to something in our lives, we are encountering adversity. Persecution, the way I'm thinking about it, is really when you encounter direct personal harm that is intended to eliminate or oppress an individual or group of people. That is persecution. And so we've got to be careful in our setting, because there are places around the world today where if a pastor or church leader is doing what I'm doing, is teaching out of the Bible, is leading people in a local church, they can face imprisonment or fines and even sometimes death just for being a Christian and leading a church. And so that's not my experience. And it would be incredibly insensitive of me to place my experience on the same footing as my brothers and sisters around the world right now, this very moment, who might be facing that persecution. And so we just need to be honest as we look at a group of believers that are facing something that maybe is a little closer to persecution, that we define our situation through that lens more of adversity is what we typically experience, right? So when I experience pushback for following Jesus in my life, or whether it's just not incredibly a popular thing to do maybe for me compared to my peers or compared to the people around me, right? When I experience that, that's experiencing adversity because of my faith. And here's the thing, Peter's letter, really what it does is it encourages us to take a posture that is often different than one that is sometimes portrayed by what I believe is a minority of Christians. But sometimes there's this idea out there, right, that Christians are just aggressive and angry towards anything that might challenge them or threaten them. And Peter's encouragement that we're going to see in the letter of 1 Peter is a very different response than that. And so why are we looking at Peter's encouragement today anyways? Why are we taking the time to do that in this series? Well, here's the thing. Peter is trying to answer the same question that each and every one of us ask. How do I belong in my world? How do I fit in my world? How do I interact with the forces and the systems and the people and the structures that maybe directly or indirectly affect me? How do I fit and belong into the world around me? And so that's why we're looking at this, because there is good stuff for us to take from this, to face the adversity that you are facing right now in your life, and you can take these truths and apply them to where you are at. Now, what's not so obvious from this letter is that from the start here, is that these believers that Peter's writing to, these groups of followers of Jesus, they're facing, again, up against persecution in their world. And so we know that not because necessarily so much of what's here, but understanding the context in which it is written. So Peter writes this in the kind of first half of the 60s AD to these Roman provinces. And so he's likely writing towards the beginning of the reign of Nero. Nero, not Nemo. Okay? Because Nemo is cute and lovable and concerned for others. Emperor Nero, all you need to know about him is he's pretty much the opposite of that. Among some of the things he did, he had his own mother murdered, among other less than moral choices. He's not a great guy. In fact, he goes down as being one of the most notorious Roman emperors of his era. And so this is the setting to which Peter writes to these group of churches who are living under the time of Nero. And so one example of the persecution that these followers of Jesus face. In 64 AD, there's this great fire in Rome. And we know from accounts outside of the Bible, kind of Roman historians write, that it was likely a fire set by Nero to clear ground for a brand new building project, right? Because in a crowded urban setting, if you're the emperor, just burn down a section of town to build something new. And so this is kind of Nero's mindset, but it's not a real great PR move for him to just kind of do that. And so what he does is, again, not in our Bible, but existing Roman historians write this, that he blamed the fire on Christians, which led to the persecution, the jailing, and the death of Christians in these Roman provinces. This is who Peter is writing his letter to. We don't know if he's writing before or after the Great Fire in Rome in 64 AD, but we do know this, that they are facing intense persecution as they're reading this letter. And really, so for us, even though we're not maybe facing that, maybe we're up against just adversity in our lives, but there are these themes, regardless of whether it's adversity or persecution that we're facing, there are these themes that kind of exist throughout this letter of 1 Peter. And so it would be a great exercise for you to maybe kind of read this letter this week and see where you see these themes, but there's three that just jump out to me as I look at it. One is that we're called to live holy and honorable lives that imitate Jesus. Second thing I see is that we're called to live within our world rather than retreat from it, and really to seek to influence by example first and foremost. And then lastly, I see a third theme of just being respectful and engaging with those who are different than us. For those who are outside of our group, we're called to do that with respect. And so my hope is that if you're joining us, no matter where you are, whether maybe you're struggling in your faith, maybe you don't have faith this morning, whether you've been following Jesus for decades, my hope would be those three things, you would want your life to reflect those. You would want your life to kind of be moving towards those kind of qualities. And so the question is then, how do we go about living this way in our world? How do we do that? Because it's not a question of what we do, it's a question of changing how we go about what we do. And so for those who, again, are like, I believe like myself, I am not facing persecution. I face adversity in my life. What I should not do is try and look for or invent persecution to try and match what's going on here in 1 Peter. That would be the wrong thing to do. That's not what we're not supposed to kind of just go around and try to become persecuted or oppressed. That's not the goal of what Peter's writing. Instead, what we ought to do is live the kind of life that he's inviting us into here, in these qualities of living a holy and honorable life, of engaging with those who are outside of our group, maybe with respect, of leading by example in our lives as we interact in our world. And so let me just kind of like play this out. Okay, like how does this actually play out in real life? So for me as a pastor, one of the things that I have always tried to do well is we want to serve the community around us as a church, that the community around us will be better because we are here. And so one of the ways we do that is to look at how we can partner with the local schools. And we know that there's so many needs and we want to partner with that. And so as a pastor, that's kind of been a mixed bag for me. When I've gone to school, sometimes they maybe don't need my help, or maybe there's some resistance there, right? And so my goal isn't when I meet resistance to say, I'm being persecuted. Like, let me put this on my my Instagram here real quick and see like what's happening to me. Like, no, I am not called to make that about myself. A couple of years ago, we started something brand new called Night to Shine, and we partnered with hundreds of other churches to host at the same night, on the same night of a year, a prom for individuals with special needs. And so we wanted to let families know about this event, this full prom experience for their child with special needs. And so I looked to get the word out to schools. And so I remember going down to a district office and going up to a desk and introducing myself and saying, hey, my name is Jeff and I'm from Rainier View Christian Church, and I just wanted to kind of pass along some information about night time. And I was cut off mid-sentence. It was like, oh no, that's a religious church thing. Oh no, you can go see Sally down in this office and she will let you know about the appropriate ways that you may or may not be able to get that information out. Good day, sir. That wasn't even that exaggerated, this encounter, right? And so I had a choice to make. Am I going to claim, oh, look at how I'm being persecuted for my faith? Like, no. what happened to me? I just got told no. And some of us need to just recognize, like, sometimes it's okay to be told no. And I had a choice to make. Am I going to adhere to the encouragement that Peter gives? Look at this verse in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 13. It tells me what? Submit yourselves for the Lord's sake to every authority instituted among men. And so there was an authority in front of me, and I had a decision to make. Am I going to engage respectfully, or am I going to make it about myself? And here's the thing. We would have missed out on an opportunity to do good if I had made it about myself, because we discovered some great success in being able to engage with other individuals and other means to get the word out, to serve our community, because that's what we wanted to make it about. Now, we have had the chance to create some amazing partnerships with our local schools by adopting this kind of posture that Peter talks about, one of respectfulness. And so, through here at Rainier View, you may or may not know, we have Serve Sunday every year where we beautify our school campuses. We are actively participating in getting food to kids and families in need in so many different ways. But sometimes there are things that are even just behind the scenes that you don't get a chance to even know about. Like, because of your giving, because of your generosity, we just accomplished some of these cool things that you might not even know about. And so one of those, during this quarantine season, I got an email almost out of desperation from a school social worker, just saying to some pastors, we've got a family, they don't have water, it's almost been 2 weeks, I don't know if anybody can do anything. And so I just decided, we're gonna get on this. And so let's get somebody out there, let's diagnose what's going on. And long story short, because of your generosity, we were able to fix the problem, and a family who was without running water for 2 weeks was able to have running water. But here's the thing. I got this super cute little note card. It's got these like muffin people on it, right? But from the school, and it's just filled with thank yous. But what I want to read is this note here. It says, Jeff and the people of Rainier View, thank you so much for your hugely generous gift for a family in need. This is the worst time to be without running water. Not only did you help this family, but you restored my faith in humanity, and that is priceless. Thank you on both accounts. That is the type of church and community that we want to build here. And why is that? Because we're living out what Peter instructs us to do. Look what he says, chapter 2, verse 12. He says what? Live such good lives among the pagans. It's not a pejorative term. It's just like it refers to those who are outside of the faith. That though they accuse you of doing wrong, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day he visits us. That's what we want to be able to build here. This type of transformational community through the people of Rainier View for Pierce County. And so I'm so glad for so many of you that humbly seek to do that. And if you're watching and you're in our community, we invite you to join us. If you're watching from somewhere farther away, find a church community that's doing this. Plug in. It is so worth it. Because why? Because when we do, we have the ability to share the reason for the hope that we have. And again, this comes straight out of this letter. Chapter 3, verse 15. Peter writes, in your hearts, revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have, but do this with gentleness and respect. And that's really what followers of Jesus, that's what we're trying to do, to be the light of the world, but with gentleness and respect, so we earn the right to share the hope that we have. If you want more on kind of what it looks like to be the light of the world, you can go to our message page and go back to this influencers series that we did, and you can just jump into that sermon on being the light of the world and check that out more. But let's look a little bit closely at a chunk of this letter this morning and how Peter's words can encourage us in the face of the adversity that you and I might be up against this morning. And so it says in 1 Peter, starting in chapter 1, it says this, Peter, an apostle of Jesus Christ, to those who are elect exiles, may grace and peace be multiplied to you. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. According to his great mercy, he has caused us to be born again to a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, to an inheritance that is imperishable, undefiled, and unfading, kept in heaven for you, who by God's power are being guarded through faith for a salvation ready to be revealed in the last time. In this you rejoice, though now for a little while, if necessary, you have been grieved by various trials, so that the tested genuineness of your faith, more precious than the gold that perishes, though it is tested by fire, may be found to result in praise and glory and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ. Though you have not seen him, you love him. Though you do not see him now, you believe in him and rejoice with a joy that is inexpressible and filled with glory, obtaining the outcome of your faith, the salvation of your souls. And so whatever your adversity you're up against this morning, you can experience true hope in your life right now in the midst of that. And I think the reason why faith in Jesus has been so captivating, has endured over the millennia, is because it's not a great idea, it's not a set of good morals to follow, it's because it's a living hope. Let's look back in verse 3 here. According to his great mercy, he has caused us to be born again to a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. You know, faith in Jesus is more than just a blind faith. It's not just a well thought out set of moral reasoning. It is so much more than that. You know, faith in Jesus is not just simply a lifestyle or philosophy to follow, although if you apply following Jesus to every aspect of your life is going to qualitatively get better. You know, faith in Jesus is not just wishful thinking, even though when we place our hope in what Jesus has done for us, we look forward to a future that is far greater and better than anything we can hope for or imagine. And I think the reason that faith in Jesus endures to this day is because it is a living hope. It's not just a good idea. Put our faith in what Jesus has accomplished for us already. And our trust is in that. That is the good news that we celebrate each and every week here at Rainier View. And so if you have, we believe there are good reasons to hold on to that faith. And if you want to discuss and dialogue with us further on that, let us know in the comment section on that digital Connect card. We would love to talk more with you about that. Because here's the thing, whether you have been following Jesus for years or you're just considering this morning, we need to be reminded that following Jesus gives meaning to my suffering. It gives meaning to the adversity that I'm up against. In 1 Peter chapter 1, let's first look at verses 6 and 7 again. Peter writes, "In this you rejoice, though now for a little while, if necessary, you have been grieved by various trials, so that the tested genuineness of your faith, more precious than gold that perishes, though it is tested by fire, may be found to result in praise and glory and honor." So following Jesus doesn't mean that we're going to have an easier life and that we're not going to face adversity. In fact, we looked, right? Life got harder for the people that Peter's writing to because they were following Jesus, because they made a decision to become Christians, right? They faced more of it, but their suffering wasn't just meaningless. And here's the thing. Unless you are looking at your life through the lens of faith, your suffering, your adversity has no meaning. When you experience, something bad in your life or something wrong, it's just really a case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time and that there's no greater meaning to it. But we know, because of what we are going through as a nation recently, we know that we don't really believe that. There's something within us that cries out for justice, right? That there has to be this meaning. It is not just suffering, is not just happening to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. But it's only through the lens of faith that our pain, that our suffering can be redeemed, that there can be a redemptive purpose. Not that God causes it, but it can be redeemed for good. Peter describes it here, right, as what? As being grieved by various trials. But at the same time, he writes there could be joy in the midst of that. It's kind of like this. Back to the idea of the funhouse mirror that creeps me out, right? Imagine for a moment like a normal mirror, a mirror that accurately reflects who we are. Okay, and so the adversity is like being distorted by that, and we can't see clearly. But when we apply this lens of faith to our suffering, to our adversity, even if we found ourselves in a position of persecution, that is like, that suffering can become like a clarifying process. It's described as like gold being refined. And as we're refined, our true identity is shining through more clearly. We're able to see who we truly are because of that. Now, the question is, do I like who I am becoming through this process of being refined? That's something we got to wrestle with. But whether or not you're facing some pretty intense adversity in your life or just some minor stuff, what I love about faith and what I love about Peter's encouragement to us is that we don't have to have all the answers. We don't have to have this solved like a mathematical equation in our life, okay? Because consider the words that Peter writes. It's Peter who walked alongside Jesus. It's Peter who experienced the empty tomb. Peter who, on the eve of Jesus going to the cross, denies him 3 times. Peter gets to experience the resurrected Jesus inviting him 3 times. Peter, feed my sheep. Feed my sheep. Feed my sheep. This Peter writes these words in verse 8. And I love that he leaves room for faith to be faith and not certainty. He says, though you have not seen him, you love him. Though you do not now see him, you believe in him and rejoice with a joy that is inexpressible and filled with glory. You know, this is the tension, I believe, that for those of us of faith, that it's to allow it to remain faith. That we are looking forward to something that we have only glimpsed, that we only experience in a very small part, that one day we hope to experience fully in our lives. But some well-intentioned, I believe, mostly well-intentioned individuals in the church have made it seem like for the last 2 generations of people being raised in the church, that somehow, if you have any doubts or any questions, that you can't really belong and you can't really be a person of faith, and so you might as well leave. And what I want you to know is this, is that if that is the reason that you have left the church, you've disengaged from following Jesus, that is not a good enough reason, okay? Bad coffee is a better reason to leave the church than that. There's actually some legitimate reasons maybe why you have taken a step back, why you have decided to disengage with church. You know, I'm going to put my email up here, and I would love if you would be willing to reach out to share your story. And I would love to even just be able to apologize if you've experienced feeling like you have to leave because of your questions, because of your doubts. And I would love for you to find a community of faith, a group of followers of Jesus to connect with, even if that's not here. Because here's the thing, this inexpressible hope and joy that Peter writes about, that you know right now that you need in your life, it is not worth waiting to engage with. Maybe this morning you need to re-engage with that in some way this morning. Because again, I think a lot of times it's just well-intentioned, but it is missing the mark sometimes how we've talked about faith and doubt and questioning. And so at least here at Rainier View, okay, at least here, the enemy of faith is not doubt, it's silence. We want to be able to hear where you are at this morning. Because why? Because Peter, the rock of the church, he's described in the book of Acts as the rock of the church, this key leader in the establishment of the church says what? Even though we don't see, even though we don't have empirical certainty, we can still possess this inexpressible joy that comes from following Jesus. You know, and that's really my story. That's my story today as we begin to kind of wind down. That, you know, I haven't been imprisoned or beaten or jailed because of my decision to be a pastor or to follow Jesus. My children have not had to go without food or clothing because of my choice of what I do professionally. But I have suffered adversity from being a pastor for nearly 2 decades. And being criticized and accused of all sorts of things, from not really being a Christian to being a judgmental hater, to being blamed for why someone's kid no longer follows Jesus anymore, has faith anymore. I've been accused for being not deep enough, for not being relevant enough, for being too open, for not being open enough. I could go on and on and on. I could fill a big old book of all of that. But what keeps me going is what Peter writes about here, this inexpressible joy that we are filled with. That's what keeps me going, and that's what I want for you this morning, to be able to truly experience this inexpressible joy. And so if you're a young person, a young adult or teenager joining us this morning, and you really just kind of want to chuck your faith, don't do it, because this inexpressible joy is worth it. For the person that you're up against some intense adversity in your family, and part of that is because of faith, this inexpressible joy is worth it. For those of you who are joining in and you are fearful about death this morning and you're wondering, can following Jesus really help me face this reality with courage? This inexpressible joy is worth it. For anyone, but particularly for my friends who are either in paid ministry or have been in the past, but for anyone who's been burned by somebody who's been mean-spirited to them in the church, this inexpressible joy is still worth being pursued. It is still worth it. And so this morning, I just want to end with one simple question. Why would you pass on experiencing this inexpressible joy? And so I would like to close by praying for you. I don't know where you're at, but I want to pray first for those of you who are following, who that inexpressible joy meter is low. You're near empty. I want to pray that you would be filled this morning. And then secondly, I'm going to pray for those who maybe you have yet to believe, to put your faith and trust in what Jesus has done for you. Don't wait to experience this inexpressible joy. Hey, would you pray with me wherever you are at right now? God, we pray for those right now who have put their faith and their trust and their hope in you. But adversity has kind of squeezed that out right now. And we right now might feel empty. I pray for that person who's feeling that way, that your Spirit would meet them where they are at right now today, that they would be renewed, refilled with this inexpressible joy within their heart and in their inner being right now this morning. Would you meet them where they're at? I pray for the person right now who's joining us here, and you have questions, you have doubts, you're not sure what this faith thing is all about, but you know this morning that there is something to following Jesus. It is as simple as just calling out. You don't have to even get all the words right, but just calling out right now to God. God, I don't understand everything, but I understand now that Jesus died on a cross for me over 2,000 years ago, but not just that. Somehow he defeated death. He experienced resurrection. And I know that you are leading me to begin following Jesus in my life. And I want to begin that now. I want to have this inexpressible joy that transcends my ability to even understand, to even have proof that right now you know that you need this inexpressible joy. Would you just be willing to reach out and to pray that prayer to God wherever you're at this morning? Jesus, meet us where we're at. It's in your name that I pray. Amen. If you want any further help in unpacking any of that and just taking a next step of faith in your life, please reach out. Use that digital connection card. We would love to follow up with you, to connect with you, to help you learn how to live out what it looks like to experience this inexpressible joy in your life in a greater, in a more powerful way. We're so grateful that you gave us a chance to join us this morning and you gave some of your time. Hey, we really hope you'll come back next week as we wrap up our series on alternate endings.
Hey, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Jeff, for your heart and for sharing from God's heart for us. This series has been such a great reminder of God's alternate ending in mind for us if we can follow the things that he's calling us to. So thank you for that. Hey, as we wrap up today, I just want to remind you that you can check us out on Instagram and Facebook. We put out a lot of good stuff up on there. You can find all of those resources on rainierview.org. And there's a lot of other great stuff on there, including student services and kids services. And just so you guys know, next we're going into a time of communion. And if that's not something that you're interested in or you're taking it later as a family, you can go ahead and just click this off right now. But we're going to come back just after a quick break and take communion together. Hey, thanks for coming back for communion. If you haven't already, make sure you take a moment and gather up the bread and the juice so we can take it together in just a moment here. If you're by yourself or if you're with your family, this is such a great moment to do something together, and so I'm glad that you stuck around. One of the great things about this series that we're in is we're using this verse, Romans 8:28. And let me just read it again for you. We've probably read it a million times in this series, but I think it's a great reminder for us. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. And not about you, but for me, one of the challenges is that I look at the things in this world, the things that we're facing. Sometimes it's hard for me to believe this. But one of the great things about communion is it is a reminder that God already did this on the cross. The cross is actually him taking all things that are painful and difficult. I mean, the cross is the most painful and difficult thing where God sent his own son to die for us. And so he's proved that he does this. And the things that are difficult and painful to us, the things that are really difficult for us to imagine that God is working for our good in, the cross is a reminder and a promise that God can do these things and that he does these things in our world, in our lives. So if you take the cup and you want to see God's love being poured out for us, that cup is a reminder of Jesus' blood which was spilled on our behalf. And the bread is the same way. It is a symbol of his broken body, which was broken, again, proving his love, his willingness to go there and to break his body for us. God works in all things for the good of those who love him. Thank you for coming this week. We're so glad you joined us. Take communion now, as an individual or as a family. Be sure to pray together, and we'll see you next week.